festival, and we'd been touring together for a little while, and
For decades, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were seen as the untouchable couple, the kind of love story people believed only existed in songs. They weren't just famous, they were legendary. They walked red carpets with effortless smiles, they sold out stadiums, they raised 3 daughters in the spotlight and somehow made it look easy. And every time the world doubted love, people pointed to them and said, look, if Tim and Faith can make it work, then love is still real. But now, something has changed, because behind the perfect photos, behind the bright stage lights, and behind the carefully controlled public image, whispers have started spreading. Fans noticed it first, a pause here, a canceled appearance there, a strange silence that felt unnatural. And then came the rumor no one wanted to believe. Faith Hill, the voice that once shook arenas, may be facing a tragic diagnosis that has quietly reshaped everything. And Tim McGraw, he's doing something that shocked even the music industry. He's stepping back, not for a tour, not for an album, but for her. Because according to those close to the couple, Tim has made a decision that could change their future forever. But here's what makes this story even more emotional. This isn't just about fame. This isn't just about health. This is about a marriage that survived temptation, addiction, pressure, and decades of scrutiny, now being tested by something far more terrifying. And the question that has everyone holding their breath is simple: is this the moment the strongest couple in country music finally breaks? Or the moment they prove their love was always real? Because what happens next might be the most heartbreaking chapter of their entire story. Long before Tim McGraw became a superstar, before the awards, the tours, and the millions of screaming fans, he was just a boy in Louisiana trying to understand who he really was. Tim was born Samuel Timothy McGraw, raised in Delhi, Louisiana, in a home that looked ordinary from the outside. His mother, Betty, worked hard just to keep life stable, and for most of Tim's early years, he believed the man raising him was his real father. He even carried the last name Smith. But then, something happened that would change his entire identity forever. When Tim was only 11 years old, he was searching through his mother's closet for a school project. It was a normal moment, a harmless moment, until he found a paper that was never meant for him to see, a birth certificate. And on it was a name that didn't belong to the man he called Dad. It was Tug McGraw, the famous Major League Baseball pitcher for the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies. In that instant, Tim's entire world collapsed. Imagine being a child and realizing your life was built on a secret. Imagine discovering your father wasn't just absent, he was famous. But what hurt even more was what came next. When Betty finally introduced Tim to Tug, Tug didn't embrace him. He didn't welcome him with open arms. He denied him. For 7 painful years, Tim lived with the reality that his biological father wanted nothing to do with him. And that kind of rejection doesn't just disappear. It shapes you. It scars you. And many people believe this was the first crack that created the Tim McGraw the world later came to know, a man desperate to prove himself, hungry for validation, and willing to fight for his place in the world. But no one could have predicted that the boy who felt abandoned would grow up to become one of the most powerful voices in country music. And yet, his biggest battle wasn't fame, that it was the emptiness he carried inside. Tim McGraw didn't grow up dreaming of becoming a singer. He dreamed of being an athlete. Baseball was his obsession. It was his escape. It was the one thing that made him feel like he had control over his future. He played passionately, trained relentlessly, and believed the sport would become his destiny. In fact, after high school, Tim earned a baseball scholarship to Northeast Louisiana University. He even planned to study law. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but life had other plans. Because in college, Tim suffered a knee injury that crushed his dreams almost overnight. And for someone like Tim, someone who had already spent years feeling rejected, this wasn't just a setback. It was a heartbreak. It wasn't only the injury that hurt. It was the feeling that life kept taking things away from him. And that's when music entered his life, not as a hobby, but as survival. Tim started learning guitar. At first, he wasn't good. He even joked later that his roommates used to hide his guitar because they couldn't stand listening to him practice. But something about music felt different. Music didn't reject him. Music didn't deny him. Music didn't remind him of what he lost. Instead, music gave him something he had never truly felt before. Purpose. In 1987, Tim moved with his mother back to Jacksonville, Florida. He enrolled at Florida Community College, played in local bands, and slowly started shaping his sound. Then came the moment that pushed him over the edge. In 1989, Tim's idol Keith Whitley died, and that death hit him like a warning from the universe, because Tim realized something terrifying. Life is short, dreams don't wait. So he dropped out of college, packed up his life, and drove straight to Nashville. No safety net, no guarantee, just a broken dream, a guitar, and a hunger to become somebody. And the craziest part, that desperate decision would lead him directly toward the woman who would later become his entire world. But Tim had no idea yet. His biggest success was still far away, and his biggest pain hadn't even begun. Faith Hill wasn't born into fame. She wasn't raised in luxury. She wasn't handed a record deal. She was born Audrey Faith Perry in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and adopted as a baby by Edna and Ted Perry. They raised her in a small town where dreams were supposed to stay quiet, but Faith was different. Even as a child, her voice stood out. At just 3 years old, she sang at church for the first time, and by 7, she was already performing at community events. People didn't just hear her sing, they felt it. And then, when she was only 9 years old, Faith watched Elvis Presley perform at the State Fair Coliseum in Jackson. That moment lit a fire inside her. Because Faith didn't just want to sing, she wanted to be unforgettable. As a teenager, she joined a gospel group and performed at churches. By 17, she formed her own band, singing at rodeos and small gatherings. But Faith wasn't chasing applause, she was chasing escape. After high school, she briefly attended junior college, but she knew she couldn't stay. At 19, she packed her bags and moved to Nashville. And Nashville was brutal. She auditioned for Reba McEntire's team as a backup singer and didn't get the job. And what happened afterward was chilling. The singer who got chosen instead died in a tragic plane crash. With 6 members of Reba's band, Faith was shaken. She was haunted. It was like the industry was reminding her how fragile life really was. To survive, Faith worked anywhere she could. McDonald's, secretary jobs, selling t-shirts, anything to keep the dream alive. And then one night, everything changed. She sang backup for songwriter Gary Burr at the Bluebird Cafe. A Warner Brothers executive was in the crowd. And when Faith opened her mouth, the room froze. That executive didn't just hear talent, she heard a future superstar. And Faith Hill, the small-town Mississippi girl, was suddenly on the edge of something massive. But what no one knew was that the biggest twist of her life wasn't her career. It was love. And that love would come with a price. In 1996, the country music world was obsessed with one thing: rising stars. Tim McGraw was exploding. Faith Hill was unstoppable. Both were young, both were famous, and both were still trying to figure out who they really were. That year, Faith joined Tim's Spontaneous Combustion tour as an opening act. And from the outside, it looked like just another professional decision. But behind the scenes, something electric was happening. They weren't supposed to fall in love. Tim was coming out of a relationship. Faith had her own history. And they both understood what fame could do to people. They had seen marriages collapse under pressure, but the chemistry was undeniable. They were spending night after night on the road, laughing, talking, sharing quiet moments between chaos. And soon, they weren't just tour partners, they were each other's safe place. Tim later admitted that they were young, silly, and totally in love. But what makes their story so unforgettable is how fast it happened. One rainy day, backstage in a trailer, Tim jokingly brought up marriage. But suddenly, it didn't feel like a joke anymore. He got down on one knee and asked Faith to marry him. Faith laughed, not because she didn't care, but because the moment was so unexpected, so absurd, so perfectly them. Tim walked away unsure if she would say yes, and when he returned, he found her answer written on the mirror in lipstick. Yes, I'm going to be your wife. Lipstick kisses surrounded the message, and just like that, the country music world had its next great love story. But here's the truth nobody talks about. Fairy tale love stories don't stay fairy tales forever. Because the moment they became husband and wife, they also became targets, and the pressure that followed could have destroyed them. But what came next would prove whether their love was real, or just another beautiful illusion. Tim and Faith didn't just get married. They shocked everyone by doing it quietly, unexpectedly, and in a way that felt almost rebellious. They invited friends and family to what seemed like a casual gathering, a softball game and a concert in Tim's hometown of Rayville, Louisiana. But when guests arrived, they realized they weren't there for a game. Under a massive oak tree, Tim and Faith stood with a minister, ready to say their vows. Faith was barefoot, 3 months pregnant, wearing a simple white dress, pearls, and a glow that made it feel like the entire world had paused. Tim wore jeans and a black coat. No flashy celebrity wedding, no magazine deal, just love, and for a while it seemed perfect. They built a family, 3 daughters, Gracie, Maggie, and Audrey. They toured together, they wrote music together, they became the power couple everyone envied. But behind the smiles, there was a darkness growing. Tim McGraw was battling something that almost destroyed everything. Alcohol. Tim later admitted that before Faith, his drinking could have ruined his life. And those close to the couple say the problem wasn't small. It was dangerous. Because addiction doesn't just hurt the person drinking, it hurts the people who love them most. Faith didn't just watch Tim struggle. She carried the weight of it. And in the middle of fame, motherhood, and pressure, she had to decide, do I fight for this marriage or do I walk away? And that's where their love story becomes different from every other celebrity romance. Faith stayed, not because she was weak, not because she was trapped, but because she believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. Tim later said if he hadn't married Faith, he might have run his career into the ground. Or worse, that one statement says everything. Because while the world saw a glamorous couple, Faith was quietly holding a broken man together. And Tim, he was slowly realizing that losing her would be the greatest loss of his life. But just when fans thought they had survived their hardest chapter, a new threat appeared. And this time, love alone might not be enough. Faith Hill has always been strong. She's survived the brutal industry. She's survived career pressure. She's survived the endless expectations of being a perfect celebrity wife. But nothing prepares you for the moment your own body becomes your enemy. Over the years, Faith's health has sparked concern more than once. Back in the 1990s, she delayed recording her second album due to surgery for a ruptured blood vessel in her vocal cords. At the time, fans were worried, but she recovered. Then in 2015, people noticed something shocking when she appeared at the Oscars. Faith had a short haircut, and next to Tim McGraw, she looked elegant as always. But there was something else, a scar, a visible scar on her neck. Reports later revealed she had undergone a surgery called anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, a procedure used to treat serious spinal pain caused by herniated discs. Faith's recovery appeared successful, but fans never stopped watching, and recently, the rumors have returned, stronger than ever, because Faith has been seen less. She's been quieter, and her absence has felt heavy. Some fans believe her health struggles may have returned, others fear something even more serious. And what makes it more terrifying is the silence. No official statement, no clear explanation, no reassurance, just whispers. And in today's world, silence creates panic. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Speculating about someone's health can be cruel. It can spread fear, and it can invade a person's private battle. Still, fans can't help it. Because Faith Hill isn't just a singer. She's a symbol, a voice tied to people's memories, heartbreaks, weddings, and healing. So when fans sense something is wrong, they don't just worry, they grieve. And then came the report that shook everyone. Tim McGraw may be stepping back from his career to focus on Faith. And if that's true, then the situation is far more serious than anyone wants to admit. Because Tim doesn't pause his life for nothing. So what is Faith truly facing? And why does this moment feel like the beginning of a heartbreaking goodbye? There's a reason Tim McGraw and Faith Hill have lasted nearly 3 decades. It wasn't luck, it wasn't PR, and it definitely wasn't because life was easy. It was because they built something deeper than fame. They built loyalty over the years. Tim and Faith have done what many celebrity couples can't. They've stayed close. They toured together. They raised children together. And even when the world pulled them in different directions, they always found their way back to each other. Their duet It's Your Love wasn't just a hit song. It was a confession. Faith once said that performing it on stage feels so personal that the world disappears, leaving only them in that moment. And maybe that's the secret. Not that they never faced problems, but that they never stopped choosing each other. Faith's career exploded beyond country music. She crossed into pop with hits like This Kiss and Breathe. She won Grammys. She performed at the Super Bowl. She became a global icon. And yet, she never lost her identity. Tim continued dominating country music, earning awards, touring relentlessly, and becoming one of the most respected male voices in the genre. But through all of that success, they remained connected, even when their children grew up and left home. The two of them still seemed inseparable, and now, in this painful moment, their story feels even more emotional. Because it's one thing to love someone when life is exciting, but it's another thing to love someone when life becomes terrifying. If Faith truly is facing a serious diagnosis, then Tim's decision to step back isn't just romantic. It's proof. Proof that he's not the same man he once was. Proof that he learned from his past. Proof that the love they built wasn't fragile, and yet, fans are still afraid, because the truth is, health battles don't care about love stories. Illness doesn't care about fame. It doesn't care about history. It doesn't care about how perfect a couple looks in photos. It hits without mercy. So now, the world is watching Tim and Faith, not as celebrities, but as the humans trying to survive the unimaginable, and what happens next could define their legacy forever. Right now, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are living in a chapter that feels painfully different from their past. No stadium lights, no glamorous headlines, no perfect fairy tale moments, just reality. And the truth is, fans can feel it. They can feel the shift. Because when a couple that has spent decades sharing everything suddenly becomes quiet, that silence speaks louder than any song. Tim has reportedly slowed down his schedule. Faith has been out of the spotlight. And while nothing has been officially confirmed, the emotional weight around them feels unmistakable. Some people believe Faith may be fighting privately. Others believe she may simply be choosing peace away from the public. But either way, one thing is clear: their priorities have changed. And that's what makes this story so heartbreaking and so beautiful, because Tim McGraw spent years chasing success. Faith Hill spent years proving herself. They both conquered the world. And now, the only thing that matters is time. Time together. Time with their daughters. Time away from cameras. Time away from the pressure of being the perfect couple. If Faith truly is facing a health struggle, then Tim's decision to step back may not just be a sacrifice. It may be a farewell to the life they once knew. And the saddest part is, fans may never get the full truth, because not every battle is meant for the public. Not every pain is meant to be shared, and not every love story ends with a dramatic headline. Sometimes, love stories end quietly, in hospitals, in private prayers, in whispered promises late at night. But maybe that's what makes Tim and Faith different. They never built their marriage for the cameras. They built it for survival. So now the world waits, hoping for good news, praying for healing. And wondering, will Faith Hill return stronger than ever? Or is this the moment when country music's greatest love story enters its final, most painful chapter? Because if there's one thing we've learned from Tim and Faith, it's that their love has always been real. And sometimes, real love is the most heartbreaking thing of all.